Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. Today we are going to switch gears from talking about exercise and movement related things, and we're going to get into to nutrition for the next few weeks. And I wanted to just break down each like macronutrient and work across those and kind of just talk about ways we can get those macros in and different places we can source those from and things that we can do to make sure that we're getting enough of each one or not eating too much of each one. So it's good to measure, and finding an easy way to measure is going to be really useful to help us get where we want to go. So we'll start with protein, and we'll work through protein. We'll go through carbs, we'll go through fats, we'll go through fiber, and we'll go into just vegetables and different things that we need to make sure that we're doing within our diet. And it does take some planning, it takes some prep work. I have here some food that I prepped last night, and it's all ready for today's presentation, and then it'll be ready for me to eat when it's time for me to go ahead and consume it. So first we'll start with protein, and we'll go ahead and we'll dive into some things about protein. Protein is made up of long chains of amino acids, and there are a bunch of different amino acids, and we don't have to really focus in on those too much. What we want to do is just make sure we have a good variety of protein, and meaning we source them from different places, and then we'll be able to make sure that we cover all those amino acids. So what we'll go into is first just the role of protein and amino acids in the body. So when we have enough protein in the body and we go ahead and eat at least 20 grams of protein at a given time, that's going to help us stimulate muscle protein synthesis. So that's going to be like the muscle growth effect, and that is more necessary for people who are like into strength training or getting into like bodybuilding or Olympic lifting. They're going to need to worry about that a little bit more. Endurance athletes will need to worry about that a bit. But for regular people, like, you don't necessarily need to always stimulate muscle protein synthesis when you're eating. So what we'll think about is just having adequate amount of protein and letting the body just do its regulatory process, and it'll take care of that without us having to kind of manipulate that. But there are things within the world of nutrition where you want to create a certain response, and you can start to manipulate that some and start to play around with that. But for your average person, you don't have to get to that minimum 20 grams of protein for each meal. So we have anabolic state, and that's where the body is building new connective tissue. And then we have the catabolic state, and that's where the body is breaking down muscle fibers and breaking down the amino acids and using that for fuel. So if we're not fueled properly, we don't have enough protein, or we don't have enough carbohydrates in our diet, and say we have enough protein but we are short on carbs, then the body is going to start to break down amino acids and try to use that for energy, and it's not as good of an energy source. So that usually will happen when we're in like more of a starvation type mode, and we don't really want to be in a catabolic state for too long, because it's going to lead to tissue breakdown. It's going to leave us feeling a little lethargic. It's going to make us feel low energy, and it's hard on the body, especially if you're training, if you're exercising, in any shape or form, it's going to be hard to keep up with that if your body is breaking itself down, breaking down connective tissue to produce energy. So that is two of the main functions in how it works. So anabolic state is building tissue, catabolic state is going to be breaking it down. And we as exercisers and movers and people who are trying to develop good movement, we want to support our efforts with the fuel to rebuild that connective tissue and build up those fibrous filaments that create muscles. And we want to use the sources that have been provided to us to make sure that we do that. So some of the structures that protein builds, we already mentioned some, but it's going to be the muscle filaments. So your muscles are made up of like stringy things. It's not just like a bicep here. There's multiple filaments, many filaments that are going to connect from like the shoulder to the elbow, and that create that flexion. There's a lot of like stringy filaments there that are going to create that. And then we also have connective tissue. Fascia is what we call it. And that fascia is also made up of protein, a collagen protein. And the body actually can make collagen for itself if it's given the resources, which is a pretty neat thing. Same with amino acids. The body can make other amino acids as well if given the right resources. Some amino acids, the essential amino acids, they are not made by the body, so we will need to consume those through our diet. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to take an amino acid like supplement, but it could be an option. But we want to make sure that we do get a good variety in our diet, and then we can know that through that variety we can have adequate amounts of that. So beyond like the structural things that protein creates, it also is going to help support our hormones. It's going to be vital in creating hormones. It's going to be vital in creating enzymes. It's going to be useful and very imperative in creating antibodies. And these things are going to help regulate our moods, our energies. It's going to help regulate like our endocrine system for our hormones and making sure that that's all flowing well. And it's going to within like enzymes, it helps with like the chemical reactions. So like the body is working well, communicating well through those chemical reactions, and the protein is going to support that. And then with antibodies, it's going to be a part of like the immune system. It goes in there and it protects us. And we've heard a lot about antibodies in the year 2020 into 2021. But what that does is that protein goes in and it's going to identify a virus or bacteria or anything that's foreign to the body. You know, you get like a cut, and there's different exposures to foreign things within, you know, just the air around you, or say there's dirt that gets involved in that cut. Like your protein is going to go ahead and help you protect yourself from that foreign anything. It doesn't have to be one thing in particular. The protein is going to support those antibodies and help you protect yourself. So it plays a role in immunity. So we want to make sure, again, that we have adequate amount of that, because we are going to need that for ourselves and not just muscle building. So sometimes people think, oh, you just need it because you exercise, or you just need it because, you know, you're trying to become a bodybuilder or whatever. It's not necessarily the case. We need it for all kinds of bodily functions outside of just muscle growth. So for an individual who is not active, a sedentary individual, they still need protein. And there's a recommended daily amount for people who are sedentary. There are recommendations for people who are endurance athletes, and there are recommendations for strength athletes and bodybuilders as well. So for a sedentary individual, and me personally, I prefer to use a palm measurement, but we'll go through the recommended amounts, and then we'll get into an easier way to find these numbers for yourself. The recommended amount for somebody who is sedentary is going to be 0.36 times their body weight, or per pound. So you're going to go 0.36 per pound. You can do the math on that, and then that will be like how much you should have in ounces of protein per day. You can do the math there. 0.5 to 0.6 for your endurance athletes. That'll be a good place for an endurance athlete. And then 0.7 to 0.8 for strength athletes, like an Olympic lifter or somebody who is going to play like a contact sport might enjoy that place where they're doing a fair amount of lifting in the weight room and then they go play their sport. Or even if they're a non-contact sport but they want to just put on some size, that'll be a good place for them. And then there are different studies with like bodybuilders. You'll see different things online about what that number could be. I've seen anywhere from 0.8 to 1.25, and a lot of different varieties of numbers within that. But the data shows that 0.85 is about the pinnacle of what we'll get from like that protein effect, giving us muscle growth, and it doesn't seem to really enhance growth beyond that number. And you'll see a lot of different stuff on there. I'm not a bodybuilder, so I never really experimented a whole lot with that. I have experimented a fair amount with like measuring and going off of like these numbers and trying to match that up with like a scale, right? So I worked with an individual who had me doing like measurements, and I was measuring out 6 ounces of chicken, 6 ounces of fish, and I was measuring these things pretty religiously. I was really rigid about it for a little bit, but it was one very time consuming. I found myself wanting to eyeball it, and I got okay at eyeballing how much that was. But I came across a hand portion guide a few years back now, and I fell in love with that. I thought it was great because I could take my hand along anywhere I went, and I didn't have to sit here and try to figure out if this is 6 ounces. I didn't have to carry a scale around with me. I loved it. I loved it. It made it easier. It made it easier for me to maintain. Don't forget, weight loss was like the big thing for me to get into the whole fitness thing. Like, I started with nutrition to lose weight. I didn't start with exercise. And so finding ways to make nutrition easier and more accessible for myself was definitely a goal. I didn't want to have to measure out my carbs. I didn't want to have to measure out my fats. Like teaspoons of this and little cups of that. It's just too much work, frankly, to maintain that over time. I mean, if you're really trying to get into like a bodybuilding competition, or you're trying to hit like a specific body fat percentage just for your own like goals, then you might need to be a little bit more intense, is the way I would describe it, with your dieting. But like, if you're just a regular person, you want to be a healthy weight, and you want to feel good about what you're eating, you can venture around with using hand portions, and you probably will find yourself in a place where you're like, hey, I enjoy the way I feel, I'm eating and it's leaving me feeling satiated, I am not feeling hungry ever, and I'm enjoying the results of it. And that's where I think is a good place mentally and physically to be with your nutrition. I can attest to the rigid limits of the nutrition that I was working with measuring was mentally exhausting. It was a little bit difficult for duration. I did it for a week. It was like, okay, I'm hyped up, I'm doing this, it's good. 2 weeks in, I'm still firing up, you know, but you get into 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and it's like this becomes mundane. And we need ways that are more simple, we need ways that are going to be more accessible. So, for me, I like to use Precision Nutrition's calculator. It is not flawless, but it gets you pretty close, and then through trial and error, you can figure out what works best for you. And I use this calculator for all my clients who do nutrition coaching and want to approach that topic and work on their eating and trying to fine-tune that. So for me, I am given about 6 to 8 palms of protein. That's what I'll eat in a day, and that's going to be anywhere from like 72 to 96 grams, and that falls somewhere in that like endurance to strength training zone for like 0.5 to like 0.65 approximately in there for my body weight. Everybody's different, and that's why I really enjoy the palm portions, because everybody is different, and I have a palm, you have a palm, and they're going to be 2 different sizes, and our body size is probably going to reflect some of that difference too. So your palm portion size is going to be relative to you, and you can take it everywhere. That's why it's great. So I made some stuff last night. I made some chicken breast, or actually chicken thighs, sorry, and that is about 1.5 chicken thighs, and that fills up about a palm of protein there, and that is easy to have. There's also veggies in the fridge that are going to accompany that when it's time to eat. Last night we made some tacos, and we used some ground chuck, and again it's just a palm here, so that would be 1 serving. So I usually will eat like 4 meals in a day, and so you know if I'm going for 6 proteins, then I might have 2 at a couple meals and then just 1 palm at some meals. And you know if I'm a really high activity day, you know I'm training hard and I'm feeling hungry, I had all the carbs I needed, and I need more food, I just don't feel satiated. I'll check for water, make sure I have enough water, I'm hydrated, and I might add a palm or 2 of protein throughout the day. So I may end up eating a couple extra palms on higher intensity days where I am ended up beating myself up more, and I feel as if I need that fuel. So having that freedom, originally I was given, on the first time I did the calculator, I was given 6 palms of protein. Activity level change, I change what I put into the calculator, it gives me a higher number for what I get. So we'll go into a couple more things. Hard-boiled eggs, they're really easy to have prepped. 2 eggs is about 1 palm of protein. It's pretty easy to remember. It's 2 eggs for 1 palm of protein, and it's going to be roughly 12 grams of protein. So I like to think about this. If you're somebody who likes to supplement protein and use protein powders, I personally don't use a whole lot of that, but it's okay if you're in a pinch and you need to get that source in. If 2 eggs makes 1 palm of protein, it's about 12 grams. Most protein powders are going to be like 20 to 24. Some of them are a little higher, like the mass gainers and stuff. They want to be a little higher in protein. I would usually count them as two palms of protein for, like, I use a pea protein when I do use a protein, and that's 24 grams for a serving. So I usually will go with calculating it as 2 palms protein. And then we have tofu here. Tofu is going to be a good vegetarian option or vegan option for protein. And then you can see just the palm here, it's a good number. I do like to eat vegetarian meals. I also made some tempeh. So this is a buffalo tofu, and this is a miso, carrot, and ginger tempeh. So we were being very adventurous last night. This turned out really good. Tempeh is an interesting thing. Both of these are soy products. The tofu and the tempeh, they both come from soybean, which is a great source of protein, fiber. You get some carbs out of it as well. But they are good options. I think it is fair to say that most people do eat too much meat, and that we can all agree that we could all use more veggies in our life. And if we can source protein from our plants, that is a great go. I love that idea. And I think, again, back to the variety, having a good, well-rounded sources of protein. I also like to eat fish. I did not prep any salmon. I like to eat tuna. It's good. There's all kinds of different fish. If you're into eating fish, it's going to provide you that good source of protein. And again, it's still just a palm. It's not going to change that. But it will change some of the amino acid profiles that we get. Me personally, I don't think it's like a big deal to like stay real fine-tuned to like amino acid profiles and some of that stuff. I think that is good for some people to study. But I think for a practical, just regular everyday person who wants to eat better and get a good variety of nutrition in, I don't think you need to worry about that too much. I think it's just be open to trying new things. I started eating tempeh maybe 18 months ago, 2 years ago, and at first I didn't like it. I'll be really honest with you. I didn't like it. I didn't know what I was doing with it. I had no idea what I was doing with it. And I found that it needs to be really well seasoned and prepared, and using good flavors and using like moisture, I think, to help kind of get that a little less dry for me. So, you gotta venture around and explore. I think part of the process for learning to eat better is learning to cook better, right? You learn how to make things taste a little bit better, and then you can enjoy it and get the benefits of it. I promise you, like, this is an Indian dish of chicken thighs. All this food is really good. It's really good. And it's healthy too. I have no problems with any of the ingredients in here. That's the benefit of making things yourself. You can control that, and you can eat good. It tastes good. And the last thing I have here, this is definitely not something I would live off of, but they're okay snacks to have. This is an epic piece of jerky, and it's definitely on the eat less of side of life. And then I have a protein Larabar, and this is a great flavor, almond butter chocolate brownie. Very good. Neither of those are things that I would say are sustainable to eat on like your regular protein basis. But if you're taking a hike and you want to have a quick protein snack and some carbs in your Larabar, some fats there, like you can get that all in and have your numbers pretty close. I would say quality is a big deal, definitely a big deal. But if you're just looking at quantity, like they'll stack up in there, and in reality they're not the worst quality. You still have to consider sodium and stuff with your jerkies. But for like a Larabar, of all bars that you can get, it's going to be your healthier choice. Same thing with all jerkies that you're going to get. Epic is going to be one of your higher end brands. It's going to be good ingredients, not using preservatives or nitrates. These are things that you should think about, and then you can know that you're making better efforts to eat better. And there's no perfect diet. There's no perfect meal plan. I personally have gotten away from meal plans because we can use our hands to plan our meals, and today our focus is the palm for protein, and we'll get into how we measure carbs with the cupped handful, and then we'll get into fats with the thumbs, and we'll give some ideas for that. And for our veggies, we'll use a fist. And within the cupped handful of carbs, we'll have like a piece of fruit would be equal to a cupped handful of carbs. And we'll get our fiber. If we're hitting those numbers with our cupped handful of carbs, we're eating whole foods for that, and we're eating our fist of veggies, we'll hit our fiber number. We'll get more into fiber in the coming weeks. Having it prepared in advance is oftentimes really helpful for people. Me personally, I don't usually have quite this much of a spread in the fridge, because you can imagine there's a full container of each one of these things in the fridge, so it's pretty stacked in there. It's great. But usually I'll just prep enough for like the day of, following day maybe two. And so it's good to have all that going. You know, just give yourself 45 minutes to, it's going to take you an hour to make like a good quality dinner anyways, right? Maybe 40 minutes. You can make a good quality dinner in 40 minutes. But if you can just double or triple the things that you're doing already, you can make enough food for tomorrow and maybe the following day as well. And then you don't have to cook for an hour every day. You can cook an hour, get a lot of things prepped, and then maybe it takes you 15 minutes to throw everything together the next couple days as you're ready to eat. So the other things I like to think about, thinking in advance, making sure you have these things in the house is really helpful. So go to the grocery store with a plan to get, you know, a variety of proteins. You get yourself some vegetarian proteins. Get yourself a variety of like meats that you enjoy. I like to think about getting clean products when it comes to meats. So I do think that we should get our things from like a grass-fed, not a grain-fed animal, and not having them on antibiotics when they're not even sick. I think there are things that we should think about because it's more sustainable for humans in reality. It's better for our environment, and you know, it's just the way the animals should be treated, and they should be respected as well, and they should have a good life before they become food. And then your food will be better. Your chicken breast will be more tender if it has been allowed to run around and do its regular old life and not been stuck in this tiny little coop and never moved more than 6 inches in its entire life. You will notice a difference in quality when it comes to your chicken, it comes to your beef. I think for fish, it's got a different texture than a farm-raised fish, and you also don't have to deal with added chemicals that may or may not be good for you, and there's not a whole lot of evidence on either side of it. But you know, I'm an all-natural kind of guy. I believe in eating from nature, not tampering with nature, and just taking what has been given to us, you know, from the earth. And that is a belief that I hold strong to, and it served me well, and I think it will serve you well too if you can get everything balanced out. And you got good portions, you're eating clean within those portions, and you have high quality. It's going to make things just function a lot better for you. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this gives you some ideas. I hope this has made you hungry for healthy food. So I am going to go ahead and let you go, let you think about this stuff, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.